I can shut my camera off if needed. So Michael, I don't think you and I have had the opportunity to meet yet. If it's helpful, maybe we can do some introductions.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I assumed you're probably new to the call, so yeah, we can do some introductions this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Dan.
Yeah.
I'll start off because I'm the new guy here. I'm Michael Washington. I'm a principal engineer in the system planning group, and at Tacoma Water we went through a reorg about 2 years ago. I think Jenny and Tasha probably talked about this a little bit, but we put our engineering function all in one location, and so our group's really responsible for kind of developing the capital CIP that goes to project delivery to get delivered upon. So something unique. We never had this before in our organization because we've had all these silos. And so this is trying to get out of that siloed mentality to distribute projects when they need to be done. Definitely. So.
Awesome. Well, you're in the right place, Michael. Do you go by Mike or Michael?
Michael, please.
Michael. Okay. Yep. Very good. So, and you're connected with Jenny and Tasha.
Yeah.
So great.
Yep. Definitely.
Very good. So, well, we'll go around and introduce some of the other folks. And yeah, we're all in the same boat on our CIP planning and delivery processes, trying to figure out how to make them work better. And each of our challenges is a little bit unique, and we're focused on maybe a little bit different areas, but yeah, definitely a common theme. And so, yeah, welcome aboard. And goal here is to learn from each other and network with each other. So you'll see kind of how it goes. Anyway, but my name is Dan Ott. I'm the project management section head at KC Water in Kansas City, Missouri. And my focus is on both CIP planning and delivery. I'm a little bit more on the CIP delivery side and have focused there in terms of our process development. But we also have a asset manager who helped, and I worked with him on the CIP planning and business case evaluation processes here as well. And we grabbed a couple things from Jenny at Tacoma Water for our BCE process. So yeah, it's been good. So with that, I'll pass it on. Maybe I'll pick on Duncan next to introduce.
Okay, my name is Duncan McKira. I'm with DC Water. We've been working on BCE. I have presented a couple times on the BCE work that we have done. We've been participating in WISE even before it was WISE was UAM for the last couple of years, maybe more. We've been part of it. It has been very helpful putting together the processes that ASAs to be and the improvements. So we are finishing up on the BCE portion of it. And now I think we have been helped a lot by some of the information or the documents or artifacts, as I call them, that have been generated by this group in putting together some of our improvements that we have done to specifically to BCE. And welcome aboard.
All right. Thank you, Duncan. I think I'll kick it over to Brian. He's one of our newer members with this team and has been faithfully attending every week. So Brian, I appreciate that. It's a good sign for us that 7:30 in the morning from the West Coast that we're doing some engaging things. So that's good. So Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Michael's joining me on that time frame. So hey, welcome, Michael. Yeah, and as Dan said, I've been I'm relatively new as well. I'm the engineering manager for the SFPUC wastewater enterprise. And we are in the middle of a sizable capital program in the city that we presented on, a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. Gee, I don't know how long ago it was now, but there's a video on that in case you wanted to browse that and ask any questions. Hey, I'm I'm here anytime. And I want to say we have you have a really great group of people here and some valuable resources. So once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
All
Brian.
right, thanks, Brian. I'll kick it over to Naomi. We're just doing some quick introductions. We got Michael, who's joining us for the first time this week.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Noemi Revilla and I work with Brian too for San Francisco PUC. We are kind of new and actually I attend the asset management one, the group, but I'm trying to learn on all aspects. Yeah, so
Hey, and Noemi, I assume you're only here for a half hour this morning?
yeah, we have that other meeting. Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to stay here. So represent me there, please.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
And I'll get the name right, Noemi. Did I say that
Yes.
right? Okay,
Correct.
there we go.
Yeah.
I got to
Thank you.
practice. So yes, thank you. All right, and Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb Rose. I'm with the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, and my area is asset management, and I really am focusing on where it comes to CIP, where it's planning and delivery in the reliability arena of that. Thank you.
And Deb, remind me, so you guys are located in like Minneapolis, St. Paul area?
Yes, indeed, and it's getting nice today, 60.
Excellent. So yeah, we got all areas covered: West Coast, East Coast, middle of the country, North Central. So yeah, that's the cool thing about what we've learned with the technology and teams is we can pull everybody together to collaborate and learn from each other. And I think I got everybody. I guess Tasha or Jenny, I know you guys know Michael. Is there anything else you wanted to chime in with? Okay, Jenny's good. So she's got her big cup of coffee. Tasha?
No, I'm good. I think he's met me before, so.
Okay, yeah, I figured.
Unless others on the call want us to introduce ourselves. I'm not sure. There's a couple people I hadn't met, so maybe.
Yeah, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Oh, looks like I'm frozen. There we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tasha Seibert, and I work with Michael and Jenny at Tacoma Water in the System and Asset Planning Group. And fairly newer to this group over the last, I think, few months, but just interested in learning and collaborating. It sounds like Jenny's done a lot of that. So just kind of wanting to learn what's everybody else doing so we can learn from each other and make changes and do what we need to do to make it better.
Very good. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Good introductions. And yeah, welcome to you, Michael. And yeah, the goal on this, on the WISE program, and particularly this team with CIP Planning and Delivery, is we do a biweekly meeting every couple of weeks. And we've got some of us that are working on some process improvements. And I know you guys are working on process improvements as well. So we're sharing kind of updates on where we're at, getting feedback. And then also for the folks that are newer in the group are also participating on like where they're at with their programs and figuring out how this WISE effort might benefit them going forward. So that's kind of the general nature of what we're doing. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. I just put together a couple of slides, and then I'm going to kick it over to Cello and Scott. They're going to kind of help lead us this morning. But the last couple of months, we've been doing updates from our utility partners. I think Duncan provided an update last week on what DC Water's doing with their CIP planning and BCE. And one thing I want to mention just to everybody, this part of this call too, and the introductions this morning is just putting names and faces together, knowing where we're from and what we do, so that you all feel comfortable outside of these calls, reaching out, either via email or a phone call, just to say, hey, I heard Brian in San Francisco say something. I just want to follow up, or I saw this thing that he presented. I'd like to get a copy of that. We want to encourage that. So feel free to do that. And Cello and Scott also really help facilitate some of that sharing of resources too. So that's an important aspect of this, is just, again, networking, knowing each other, and feeling the freedom to reach out and call and helping each other out. So yeah, on that note, today we're shifting gears just a little bit. For the month of April, we thought it would be beneficial to do some homework on using our new assessment tools. So Scott and Cello have been working with the various groups to develop some assessment tools that really is the first step in the WISE process. The improvement process is to assess where you're at, like where are you at with your processes, with your program, and particularly identifying where are those kind of pain points that you want to try and tackle in terms of going forward with documenting as is business process models, developing some improvement ideas with an as is process model, and then implementing it. So we're going to start right at the very beginning of the overall process and leverage these assessment tools to see if it can help us with that piece. And so we really like to invite everybody on the call to consider doing the assessments. And there's three major assessment tools that are in play or in place. One of them is a process assessment tool, and that's really the one we think will benefit this group the most. But there's also a technology assessment tool that kind of goes hand in hand with the process assessment. And so there's an opportunity to utilize that, test that out as well. And then there's also some assessment tools on the people and the workforce side. And if you have interest in that piece, that can be a component of what you maybe try out as well. So that's our goal for this meeting, is just kind of kick that off and use the month of April and May to work towards completing those assessments for the folks who are on board and want to give that a shot, and then follow back up with some discussion amongst us on, hey, how did it go? What did we learn? What were some takeaways on how those tools worked? How did they benefit us? And are there any changes that we maybe need to make, or that Cello and Scott are wanting to make to make it work better? So that's kind of the kickoff and the plan for this meeting, and then for the next couple of months. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cello to take the mic and take us from here.
Thank you, Dan. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess before we even get started, is there any questions about that before we get going? Just want to make sure I give opportunity to pause. And again, we're somewhat informal. I get in a rush, but raise your hand and feel free to ask a question. This is not a formal cram everything in kind of session. So, all right, Cello, go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. So there's a lot of talk about smart utilities, smart networks, smart cities. So somebody on the board or may say, we want to be smart and we want to have a smart whatever. So then there are people in the organization that deal with processes and technology that kind of have to figure out how they can accomplish that. So we have on that predecessor to WISE, UAM focused a lot on business processes and management, but recently we are also focusing more on technology. And this model, maturity model with 4 layers, answering questions: are we collecting the data we need? Are we managing it properly? Do we provide analytics? Are really part of a different WRF project 5039 smart utilities that I was involved with. So I'll show you the details in a minute. But basically, for each one of these layers, there are some things that the business side needs to do, which is the blue, some stuff that the technology folks mostly have to do, and some places where they really have to work together. So the questions that I'm going to talk about today kind of follow this kind of flow. So as Dan showed, this is on the bottom. These 6 boxes are the steps in our improvement methodology. And the first one is to kind of assess where we are now. So what we're going to focus on today is, like Dan said, on that bar on the left side, business process, and then the technology and how we can look at that. So this tool has 2 components. One is about the business processes. Have we defined the business needs and stuff like that? What kind of support do we need? And the other one is really about technology. So I'm going to stop this and show you what that technology tool looks like. It really is not meant to be a survey. It's meant to be something that would be worked out in meetings, one-on-one meetings, or sorry, I had to turn off my phone. Meetings, team meetings, and so forth. So let me explain how this spreadsheet looks like. This is 6th generation of version, trying to make it simpler and simpler. So you will see that these columns are different types of data that we may need to perform the process that we've selected. So this is category 1, 2, 3, they go across the top. Is it big enough so you guys can read it? Is it okay on your screen, or do I need to zoom in? It's okay? Okay.
It looks okay.
So let's say that on this one, on this specific process that you selected, and this could be completely different on a different process, you'd say, okay, and you would type in, you'd say, I really need operational data, and on the first, on this row, and then what is the authority source for that data? And you would say it's the SCADA system or DCS or whatever, AMR or AMI, whatever system you have. Then you need vertical assets data. Maybe that's in your CMMS. Maybe you need linear assets data, CIP data that may be, this is supposed to be oh yeah, it is maintenance data. And, or maybe financial data. It's really or engineering drawings and specs. It really could vary a lot, you know, whether you talk about procurement or stuff like that. So you define the data and the sources of data. Then you would say, okay, which unit is responsible for collecting this? That's just a comment that pops up that tells you, you know, that you would enter the information into these cells. And then which business unit manages and supports the system. So you'll see that these, and how well is the data documented? So you go here, and for each of these data sets, you would say, well, I'm not sure, or sparse or little documentation exists and knowledge is in people's heads, or some documentation is in SOPs or IT system documents, or mostly documented, and then well documenting, including our IT artifacts such as system architecture or enterprise architecture and so forth. So you would kind of think about each one of these systems and answer these questions. The third question is also still about generating or creating data. How important is the data? How is it created? So if you see here, the options are, I'm not sure. Well, it's manually entered into files, documents, or spreadsheets, or it's manually entered into an IT system or database, or it's collected automatically and stored in IT system or database, or it's extracted from other IT systems or databases. So these are just kind of options to let us know what is the terrain about sensing this level 1. Just to go a little bit further, level 2 is how do you manage data? And, you know, how is this stored and managed in each one of these categories? And you would say, well, it's just paper records, it's files on local drives, on shared drives, in software application that is the authoritative source, like SCADA system or CMMS, or it's in data mart or data warehouse. So this is really the stuff that people on the technology would be mostly knowledgeable about. Then that's level 2, how data is organized. How complete is it? How complete are the records? How complete are the attributes? You know that, especially in asset management, that a lot of the data we have may be missing either records or attributes. So this is on level 2, how data is organized, what is about the data taxonomy and hierarchy. And that is on how we're managing data. So as you would essentially be populating this spreadsheet. Let me just do this, would be, you would just be populating the spreadsheet and end up with a page that looks kind of like this. I know you can't read it. It's not, I'm just saying it would be, this is like the entire spreadsheet. And I will set up conditional, this is the newest version. So I'm going to set up conditional formatting. So there will be 5 different colors depending on the one of the 5 choices you've made. So it goes all the way to level 3 in terms of what kind of analytics are in place. So let me see, level 3. When it comes to organization of the data, it will also say, well, what is the naming convention? Are the names or tags consistent with names and tags in other systems that support this process? For example, if you have a pump, does it have the same name in your engineering drawing, in your maintenance management system, in your mathematical hydraulic model, in your CAD drawings and stuff like that?
Cello, this is Scott. Yeah. More just back to context, because what we are doing that Cello described is that we're documenting what the as-is business process is, so that we can and then collecting through these assessments data and information that's going to help us on the technology and the business process side in order to help us decide where we want to be, so that we can develop a 2B business process model. And it looks like it's a lot of detail, but in fact, it's relatively straightforward when you get into it. And it's the kind of thing, as Cello mentioned, that can be done in a workshop type of setting. It's not a survey that you send out. It's something that a team or a group of people can work together to develop. Here's the basic information around what we have now, so that we can determine what it is that we need. I'll stop there, Cello.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. So we're talking about the first step in the improvement methodology. And so how we got there is we figured out what we want to improve. We selected a business process, and I'll show you some examples. And now we're doing these 2 boxes. So if, for example, the upper part of that spreadsheet that talks about kind of business documentation, if your process is not well documented, it probably means that you would want to develop that documentation first, so that you could even get information that'd be useful when you look at the maturity of your current technology. So thank you, Scott. So let me stop it here and see if there are any questions or thoughts.
Is that making sense to you? Does that make sense?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
This is Deb. The questionnaire for maturity, does that work? Does that work just for this tool, or are we talking about any technology asking those questions? I'm just making sure I understand.
Okay, the tool itself, for example, on the people side of things, where confidentiality and individual responses are important, here we felt that it's really a team discussion and among all the stakeholders. so that on that side, we're using Microsoft Forms, which is really a survey. Here, we felt that spreadsheet is something that everybody knows how to use. It's relatively simple to maintain, and the analytical part and reporting part can be done then either in Power BI or in Excel itself. And I will develop some tools on both Power BI and in Excel to help display the data.
But Cello, yeah, Cello, I think, her question was, can this apply to any technology? And what we're really doing is it can apply to any business process that you're trying to improve.
Exactly.
And that would have technology associated with it, Deb.
Great. I understand now. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. So it really is kind of generic in that sense, because once you define the data and the systems and data that you that are supporting this process, then it will be the content will be very different of the spreadsheet if you were looking at customer support system or if you were looking at procurement. The framework and the ideas are still the same, but the content, what gets into the cells, will be very different. Yes, Dave.
Dan has his hand up, Cello.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of a couple of things. So yeah, Deb, with your question, great question, and I think the way the tool is set up, from what I can see, again, I need to dig into it a little further, but it's really intended it could apply to any technology that you're dealing with. And we actually had an interesting conversation about technology and process. I think one of the challenges we have organizationally is that a lot of times we are thinking about technologies or assessing technologies apart from our processes or without having a good, clear understanding of our processes. So Mike Barnett, who's on the line, brought up a good point the other day that it's important to kind of understand how the data or system or technology connects with the process, like where it fits in with the process. So that's kind of how those things fit together, and how the assessment tool is built is to really, and Cello did what we're all tempted to do. And I'm going to pick on Cello a little bit. He started with the technology. That's like what our organizations, what we want to do is we want to dive right into, let's go find that cool technology tool that's going to solve all of our problems. Well, actually, we got to take a step back and say, do we even understand our process and how this technology fits with our people and our processes so that we can then implement it and leverage it to its fullest benefit? And I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir. I know you guys know all that stuff, but Chill's maybe going to get to that. But there's also, you saw on the spreadsheet, a tab for a process assessment. So that's really kind of the first step, is to go through and do the process assessment. To identify, hey, is your process good? Does your process work right? What's missing? Those kinds of things. And then as you're thinking about technology that you want to apply to making that process work better, then do the technology assessment to figure out what's the right way to implement that technology within the process. So I'm going to stop talking, and it looks like we got some more hands raised. And see, Cello, correct me where I maybe messed up, because I'm still trying to learn this. I'm trying to unlearn some things maybe I've done in the past, and relearn some things.
You brought up a great point, because when I opened up the spreadsheet, it opened up on the data and technology side. But actually, the first page is all about the business process. So I don't know what happened. I should have been on this page first. But so, for example, so what you would determine here is like, what is it that I'm wrestling with here? So this question is, describe the scopes. So in terms of scope, is it just like something like calibrating a flow meter or one person is doing? Or is it maybe members within a single small business unit, or 2 or 3 small different, or 4 or many business units across the organization? Because then how many, if there are a lot of stakeholders, it's a different kind of deal than if you're talking about, for example, we're talking about CIP planning. You know how many different stakeholders are involved in that. So Duncan was talking about business case evaluation, BCE, which is at the front part of CIP. And when they did training on this, I think you had like 100 people in training, wasn't it, Duncan?
Yes, yes. We did a couple training. And the first one we had about 100 people. The second one, because it was hands-on, the number dropped to about 60. But
yeah. So
yeah.
it's important to know before we think about technology we're going to use, how many people are going to have to deal with this technology? What kind of data are we going to need? And so the second question on the business side is the impact. What is the impact if you know, consider the adverse consequences of these items that might result if the process is not managed properly? Is it going to impact levels? How is it going to impact level of service from, I don't know, no or little impact to critical impact, regulatory compliance, financial and cost, organization's reputation, legal exposure, organizational culture, integrity, employee engagement? You can add more. And so you can start getting a sense what kind of challenge are we dealing with, and use that in planning efforts. And that's why it's blue, you know, these pages, because it's the left column, the business. What is included in the documentation that you have for this process? Have you identified all the stakeholders, identified activities and workflows, the data required to support the activities, decisions that need to be made, the data required to support the decision-making, what technologies currently enable these activities, roles and responsibilities. So you can imagine that if one goes to look at technology before knowing these things, it really would make it less likely to make that successful. And I think that there's just a couple more questions here. One is, what are your improvement goals? And what are the metrics that you're going to use? What is the priority of these improvement goals? And how is it currently measured? So if we want to have a success, how are we going to measure success? So how are we going to judge if we're successful? And the last one is, how are those metrics and goals used and implemented? Are the participants in the business process, did they provide input into these metrics? Are the goals specific and measurable? Are they achievable, relevant, and time-bound? Metrics are identified and aligned with goals. Process performance monitor. And the answers, again, I don't know, no, or I disagree, maybe, or I just somewhat agree, and mostly agree. So there are statistics that 70% of improvement initiatives fail. And I think a lot of times they fail because people don't do the upfront work to make them successful. I see Scott has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reference Deb had a comment in the chat, and probably like everybody else, it's, hey, this is real cool stuff. Can I get my hands on this, and can I use it? And of course the answer is yes, but Cello is going to be getting in a couple minutes here to, you know, where we're at right now and what we're looking to do, because we do want to make sure that we're following the process where we're identifying a problem area that we want, a business process that we want to deal with. We're documenting our as-is situation and then a to-be situation, and we're going through a pilot process in order to identify what the business. We're doing pilots in different utilities, and you're getting to that, right, Cello? This is the context we want to use for how we use this information in utilities. But the answer, you know, to Deb's question is, of course, this is available for you to look at, play with, etc. But we also are what we want to get to this spreadsheet and talk about where we are in the process. And in this particular team, we're dealing with the CIP, development and execution, and there can be a sub process that you would be looking at. You wouldn't have to look at the whole thing, but a sub process where you could apply these tools. But we wanted to, in this meeting, make sure we got to this spreadsheet and have Cello describe where we're at in the piloting process.
Yes, thank you. So this is all posted to the knowledge base. So all this stuff is already available, accessible to you. Some of it, like the one that I showed with this, the questions, I have been rewriting. This is the 6th time I've kind of completely substantially made changes, trying to simplify it. But we have, again, this spreadsheet also, we're going to track who's going to be looking at what. And the first step in that thing was select the business process. So we're going to say, well, what business process did you select? These are the ideas for the pilot. These are the ideas that people have mentioned so far. For different, more could come. And I hope that more will come. And then there are things that they would do in terms of assessment. This is the assessment thing. So they may do so what I was showing you is this, the assessment for process and technology. The people part, this part is, and this is just like, when do you want to start it? When do you want to complete it? Is what we've been working on, the workforce and organizational team. That is a survey that has, this one has 18 questions or statements, and this is a follow-up. That's certainly applicable. I mean that's an, and the third component is the change management. That one we're still finalizing. So all this would be, will be available, published, shared. And the nice thing about the ones that are in spreadsheets, these are in Microsoft Forms, so they're a little bit more difficult to share. I have to set up they're a little bit more difficult to share, but that's why we decided to have these ones in a spreadsheet form. And then after you do the analysis, you'd go to that second step where you're going to say, okay, now I'm going to look at as business process as is model, and Kansas City's already done this. And then we're going to do a 2B. Well, they've already done this. And I think DC Water may, have all these things completed already. Some may still need to do it or refine it. And then after that, is improvement planning, improvement implementation, and then the case study. So the idea is that people would select different processes, say, okay, I'm going to do these assessments, and maybe somebody just decides to do the people part. And I'm going to do these assessments, and I'm going to do this analysis and improvements. Does that help, Deb, does this help kind of explain things?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Dan has his hand up here. Yeah.
Yeah, Jill, I just wanted to chime in and definitely encourage everybody in this group that we're all kind of in different places in terms of when we've started with this effort, and some of us are tackling some specific business process model improvements and may already be, like Cello mentioned, a little further along in that process, and that's okay. But I think this assessment tool really, again, is at the very beginning of the improvement cycle. And so no matter where you're at, I want to encourage you to consider completing an assessment. So use the spreadsheet. And again, it's not about the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's just a tool to help generate some good conversations with your team members. And that's the goal, yeah, that Cello and Scott have had to make these tools beneficial. And we didn't have those when we started on our business process work. So we maybe went into it just without that kind of information. But now we're going to go ahead and complete that process assessment and do it on our current process that we're working on with our water main replacement as-built process. So yeah, so I want to encourage anybody and everybody to do this. And I guess maybe Cello, you want to talk about what that would look like, or actually I'll just share what that's looked like for us so far, and then you guys can chime in on what that might look like for everybody else. But before I get started, Jenny's got her hand up. Go ahead.
I just want to echo what you're saying, Dan, is that kind of being involved with this group, that this process improvement process is an art, not a science. And this is a tool to help you, but each utility is unique in what their challenges are and their processes. So I think it's okay. I'll speak hopefully for Cello to tweak it and use it how it's going to bring value to your organization. So this is just a framework, and not to get too hung up on, am I doing it right? Is this the correct application? That's just been my experience working through these tools with my colleagues, is sometimes we can get stuck in that frame of thinking versus how is this going to bring value to our organization, and where it brings value, focus on that. And if there's tabs that aren't going to be as applicable, that's okay. This group is just here to support you, and you can share how it's being useful. That will help others. So just keeping in mind, we're not building the tank with this process. This is evaluating the process. And so it's a little different, I think, just as the non-engineer on the call. I think that's an important thing to remember, is that it's not one right way to use the tool and apply the tool.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan and Jenny. So these are the steps that we've been talking about. We were talking about this one up front, the capability assessment. The second one is this is system modeling. If you're talking about a process, system model is the notation that we use to model the system is business process model and notation, which is an ISO standard. So if we were doing a hydraulic model, it would be Saint-Venant equations if it's free surface flow. Or it would be such and such kinetics if it's, aeration. And then once we know where we are and where we want to be, then it's planning, improvement, and implementing, which is a combination of project management, scope, schedule, budget, and change management, which is we actually have to deal with people as well. So these are kind of the steps, these 5 steps before you get to monitoring performance, about how do we build solutions and implement them. So we could not, the benefit of doing the system modeling before capability assessment is because people naturally develop a rhythm and an approach to asking these questions. And this is not often done in water sector utilities. So we wanted to start with the process because it is something that you're only describing what you're already doing. So you know it. You just have to put it in the right notation. Scott.
Yeah, I was just gonna had 2 quick comments. One is, I think Jenny's point was really valuable because everybody's at a different place. As even the spreadsheet says, it's not like you have to go build the tank or build the whole, everything. You can pick and choose what you want to apply. You can deal with the people assessment or the process, the technology assessment, and you can do it for pieces. You don't have to do it for everything you're doing. The second point was really, Brian had a comment in chat, and Noemi's on the line here, but people are expressing an interest, say, I want to use this tool. I want to use this tool, right, Dan? And so what we want to do is we want for you to, that's great. And if you can identify what is the process area that you want to focus on for this team, it would be within the CIP probably. If you want to identify what that is, then we can get it on that inventory, and we can begin to work with you on to assist and support you in tailoring it to exactly what you want to do.
And you will note that although we've been working on the CIP, which is not a trivial kind of thing, for a couple of years, and that Dan and Duncan have selected things at the opposite side that are sub-processes. They didn't say, we're going to do CIP, planning and delivery, because it's huge. So to identify something that is of most immediate interest to you, a component of that, and focus on that is really what makes most sense. And then when you do it to one vertical example, you can just replicate it, and then you're kind of cooking with gas, and you don't. But to try, and the purpose of these questions up front is to say, is this a little bit too big? We've got 120 stakeholders. Data is everything across. Is this where we want to start? And maybe calibrate a little bit how to, and if it's really all across the organization and the impact is critical, and maybe that's not the best thing to start with, but to kind of break things down. So, that eventually, I'm going to build a dashboard that kind of puts all this together with the colors. As I said, I've been changing this quite a bit, and you can add your items in here as you wish. So it's not it's not like Jenny says, and then like there's only one way to do it, but it's just intended to help you and give you some assistance.
Yeah, Cello, I'm going to jump in here too and just say that that as Cello mentioned, I think that's an important thing is pick a process that you want to make some improvement, and most likely it's going to be kind of a pain point area. When we started this whole thing, we kind of took let's map out our whole CIP planning and delivery process, and we used the template that was developed through this program. So there is an existing kind of industry-wide template that's a general template for CIP planning and delivery. So if you don't have any business processes at all, or you're just not quite sure even where to start, that could be a good starting place, is to look at that. It's a 7-step process, and hopefully it has some things that are common to what you already do and that you're familiar with. And then maybe you could find something there and say, oh, hey, I want us to focus on this piece. Maybe it's the very start, and I can share my screen. I pulled that up so you guys can look at that. There's the beginning of the CIP process starts with identifying needs in CIP planning. And of course, it ends at the very end with project closeout once you finish a project and project delivery. And then there's lots of things that happen in between. And these have detailed process models that were built, again, as kind of a general industry-wide standard for how utilities typically do CIP. Now, it's not going to match yours exactly, and we customized it for us. And then procurement, maybe, I know that's a huge area for everyone. Maybe that's where you want to focus, is just mapping out your procurement steps. We spent a fair amount of time on that at the beginning of our detailed design stage or conceptual design stage, on selecting a design consultant and the procurement process associated with that. So again, those are just kind of some examples, but that's kind of step one, is to pick that process. And then the next step is to take these assessment tools and do a workshop with a few of your stakeholders and walk through those assessments to identify like where to get started on the process improvement journey. And what we did, and I want to encourage everybody on this call as kind of a next step, a next action item is, maybe Cello, we can send this out if that's helpful. If you've already got your existing processes, maybe take a look at your existing processes and figure out what you're going to tackle next and what you might be able to do the assessment tool on, you know, for folks like Jenny in Tacoma and for Duncan. What I did is I just scheduled some time with Cello, Scott, and Mike Barnett. We spent an hour just kind of having a working meeting to figure out, okay, well, what process are we going to focus on? How are we going to use this tool? And so now I've got some direction, and I'm going to take these spreadsheet tools, and I'm going to schedule a couple of meetings with some of our core stakeholder people and just go through and answer the questions and talk through that spreadsheet and get their feedback. So that's kind of the next two steps. So that's kind of where we wanted to land on this call, is kind of a call to action for everybody is, you know, think about kind of what you've seen, and then look at your calendars and identify some open times that you could meet with Cello, Scott, and Mike Barnett, and then get these tools in your hands, answer your questions, and figure out kind of how you could actually do it for your utility. So, okay, I'll stop talking, and anybody got other questions or comments?
It's a great idea to send out the overall model, Dan. That is really, because it'll be a map. People can go around and select the piece that they want to work on. That would be fantastic. Very helpful. Hi, Zonetta. So, Noemi, does any of this make sense to you? Ring a bell? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't participate on the CIP side of things. I mean, because we are not yet ready for that. But I know V and Brian and others that do. It does make sense to me. You know, I think, guys, as you saw in the chat, I think we would like to do this. Yeah, we're interested. I think it will be a great exercise for us. So yeah, I think more people like V. I know V has been very involved in the CIP. But I think it will be great to start using this tool, right? Because then we will see, you know, we will start asking ourselves questions and looking at things a little in more detail. So it makes sense, definitely.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Dan, that's all I had for today. So I think I spreadsheeted everybody to death today.
Yeah, we kind of jumped all over the place. That's okay, man. That's the way we keep it informal, and it's been good. And great comments from everybody. We got just a few more minutes. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we can kind of turn people loose a little early. Yeah. All right. Well, last call. I'll send out an email like I normally do with the process models or links to that Cello maybe